Hello and welcome back to these English remote learning videos that we have weekly. First of all, I would like to say that I'm sorry that I couldn't upload this video before, but I really had some troubles with the audio and recording specifically. But I got myself a new microphone and I think we are ready for this. Alright, so let's start. So it is always very important to remember what we studied last week. So we have here that we saw the different uses of turn, and we concluded that these phrasal verbs are very helpful whenever we want to communicate different ideas. With using one single verb, you can say many different things, and that's the whole purpose of it, to expand your vocabulary. And of course, remember that you can use these phrasal verbs in all tenses, in the past, in the present, in the future, etc. Our aim for this week is to appropriately use reflexive pronouns in context. These are pronouns that I'm sure that you know and understand and that you have seen, but that you don't use very often. So we're going to see them in this class with a little bit of background information, and hopefully we can use them in the future. So, whenever you study something new, it is very important to recall what you already know, your previous knowledge. And we have that the most common pronouns that you usually see and use are the following. Well, subject pronouns: I, you, he, she, it, we, and they, very common. And of course, object pronouns: me, you, him, her, it, us, or them. We're going to explain the use of each one of these so you can remember them, alright? On the first place, we have subject pronouns, which are used to refer to who or what performs the action in a sentence. So you see the list right there, and in all these following actions, there is a subject. So I read a book, I am the subject. You listen to music, you are the subject. He watches Netflix, she will watch Netflix. It is beautiful. We painted the living room. They love English classes. So for all of these sentences, there is a subject that is right there at the beginning, and that represents who or what performs the action. All right. So now, on the other hand, we have object pronouns. Let's remember a little bit of one of the most basic structures of English sentences that we see at school. Normally, you have a subject in a sentence, who is the person or thing that performs the action. We have the verb, that is the action itself, and then we have the object. And with an object, we use that to refer to who or what is affected by the action of a verb. It needs some context sometimes, though. So let's see some of the examples. We have that you can ask me anything. Who is the subject? You. And I tell you that you can ask me anything and that I am affected by that. The same applies to the next example. I understand you. I understand you. Now, it is very important to pay attention to the following examples because they do need some context. So we have, my dog bit him. You see the translation in Spanish. My dog bit him. Who is him? I need to provide that information previously. So let's see, I invited my friend Mario to my house and my dog bit him. Who is him? My friend Mario. So that is the information that we need to provide. The same applies to her. So my dog loves her. I invited my friend Vicky to my house and my dog loves her. Who is her? Vicky. Remember, we need to provide that information before. We can just throw him or her in a sentence if we don't know who are we talking about, because it is very confusing. The same applies with it. So I'm saying the sound of the waves is so relaxing. I love it. So what is it? The sound of the waves, and that is the context that we are looking for. Next example is you lied to us. So you, the subject, lied to us, and we are affected by that. And finally, our last example has the same rule of him, her, and it, that we need some context. So I'm saying here, Students from Alicante are really good, and I teach them. Who are them in this case? Who is them? Students from Alicante, and that is the context that we're looking for. So um, that is the explanation of object pronouns. So, with this background knowledge, it is now time to see today's content, which is reflexive pronouns. I have a definition for this. So, when the subject and the object in a sentence are the same, you use these reflexive pronouns to refer back to that person or thing. If this is not clear, let's see a picture. Imagine this is a sentence. So, who is the subject? The dog. The action? What is he doing? He is looking. What is he looking at? He is looking at himself. So the dog is looking at himself in the mirror. It would be wrong if I said the dog is looking at the dog in the mirror. So that is why we use these reflexive pronouns to refer back to that person or thing or animal that we're talking about in the sentence. So you see the translation there in Spanish. It has different translations, but it's basically the same. All right. Now, the other use for these reflexive pronouns is, of course, to emphasize autonomy in some expressions. We have a cover of a picture book that says, I can do it myself. So when kids are growing up and becoming more and more independent, they say, don't help me, I can do things myself. And this means, of course, I can do things without your help. So you can use this form of reflexive pronouns to refer to autonomy as well. So, how many of these reflexive pronouns are there? Well, we have a list: myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, and themselves. Have a look at yourself at the top and yourselves at the bottom. Remember that the use of you can be singular and plural. So if I'm talking to you and you are alone with me, then I can use yourself to refer to you. But if I'm talking to you and a couple of your friends, I can say now yourselves because it's a group of people. I'm talking to you, right? It is time now to go through some of these examples. The first sentence that we have is I like to be by myself, and the second is I taught myself to play the ukulele. In the first one, when you say I like to be by myself, it means that you enjoy being alone without any company to think about things. It sounds kind of, as the name says, it is reflexive and kind of spiritual. And the second example that we have, I taught myself to play the ukulele, means that I didn't need any help, that I was rather independent to do so. Our next example is yourself. Our sentence says, if you don't like food here, you can do it yourself. This is very common when kids are kind of picky with their foods, and parents would say, if you don't like the food that I cook for you, well, then you can cook it yourself. You ungrateful animal. Coming up next, we have himself. Our sentence says, Luke always says he hates himself. We are working on his self esteem. So, yeah, he has a friend and he's not feeling good about himself. He hates himself. And of course, he's working towards making him feel better about his own person. Come on, Luke, you can love yourself. Don't hate yourself. We're working through this. I support you. You're a good man. And, well, you should all do the same with your friends, alright? Our next example is herself. And our sentence says, Maya finished a university task that was meant for a group all by herself. So let's imagine Maya is in college. She has a group of 4 or 5 people that are her friends and classmates, and they have a group task. Her classmates are kind of lazy, so she has to finish everything by herself. And there you see the result. Maya is all stressed out for having to finish this group work by herself. So now when you want to talk about autonomy of things, you have itself. Our example says, my phone is not working fine. it turns itself off for no reason. I didn't touch it, I didn't do anything to it, it just died for no reason. So that's why it turned itself off. Coming up next, we have ourselves. Let's see the example. We need to take care of ourselves during these difficult times. So the government isn't very helpful, and who else is going to take care of us? Just ourselves. Finally, our last example is themselves. So my sentence says, my students can monitor themselves. They are autonomous people. Whenever I give you homework or the possibility to watch these videos whenever you can, is because I trust you, because I trust in my students, because I know that they can do things themselves. Isn't that true? So, hoping that you understood the use of these reflexive pronouns, it would be great if you started incorporating these new words into your own vocabulary. Remember that English isn't just about understanding what I hear or what I read, but also about adding these new elements into my vocabulary. We have an activity to practice this topic, and that will be all for today. So, wishing the best for you and your families. I say goodbye to you. Until next time.